From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, everyone. Thursday, August 5th, 2021, week of Black Hat. Welcome to the CyberHub podcast Practitioner Brief. I'm James Azar. I'm your host, also a Chief Information Security Officer by trade, a cybersecurity and privacy enthusiast deep inside of my body. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the show. The show is live Monday through Thursday, right here on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and you can find it on your favorite podcast listening platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You go and check it out. Make sure to subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating. Yesterday, we had an issue streaming to LinkedIn, so I couldn't get to all your comments. So let's get to those today because I missed them. Good morning to David. Good morning to Heather and James McQuiggan. Water cheers. Yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment, Heather. Don't jump ahead of the line yet. Good morning to David. And David says, the power of caffeine. Don't ever underestimate the power of caffeine, folks. It is unbelievable. Harshal, good morning, good sir. Thank you for being here. And Oyasiji, I hope I said your name correctly, sir. I apologize if I butchered it, but good morning to you as well. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We've got a packed show. We're going to talk about the first story that you see, TDS, and we're going to talk a lot about malware. We're also going to talk about a Cisco patch, the Lockbit, an energy crisis in Italy because of ransomware. Yep, that's right there, folks. And Russia and China in a cyber war. Yeah, folks, you heard it right. Here's an opportunity. We'll get to that as well on today's show. Christoph, welcome. Good morning, sir. And thank you for being here. I guess your favorite, James McQuiggan. Catch me later today with Christoph on CISO Thursdays on Renee Small's channel. That's got 1 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget that. Before we get started on today's show, though, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our awesome sponsors, Know4 and Atifa Networks. Next week on Wednesday, Tony Cole will be right here with me, guys. Love when Tony's on. It's going to be absolutely epic. Let's do that. But now, coffee cup cheers, folks. My double espresso. Again, foam. Foam is everything. This is actually not my favorite coffee seat. The foam line here, it's not as thick. It should be thicker. Plus, the foam's got bubbles. You never want bubbles in the foam. You need a good, straight foam. It's got to be really foamy. That's a good espresso. But that's your espresso lesson for today. We'll get into cyber here in just a moment. Coffee cup cheers, water cheers, and chai cup cheers as well to all of you folks. Let's get McQuiggan's comment up here for that. Thank you, James McQuiggan. I really appreciate it, buddy. Let's get into today's story. I may have a trouble saying this name, but I've been practicing it, so I hope I get it right. It's Prometheus. It's the secret TDS behind some of today's malware campaign. A recently discovered cybercrime service is helping malware gang distribute their malicious payloads to unsuspecting users using hacked websites. The service is what security researchers call a traffic distribution system, also known as TDS. The idea is that malware gangs can run access to Prometheus and receive an account on the TDS platforms. Buyers can then access the account, configure the malware payload they want to distribute, the type of users they want to target based on anything from geographic location, browser, OS version, and provide a list of hacked web servers. Then the TDS will scan the list of hacked websites, deploy its own backdoor to the hacked servers. Once that's done, customers can then move on to send email spam campaigns where the email text contains links to hacked websites. When users click the link and land on the website, the backdoor analyzes the victim browser details and based on campaign parameters will either redirect the user to a clean web page or one that does host a malicious file. This is thanks to the folks over at Group IB who came up with this research earlier this spring. It's being advertised and prices ranging $30 for 2 days of access to the platform, or for just an easy price of $250 a month, you get unlimited access to the platform all month long. What a deal, folks. Group IB researchers also said they discovered several campaigns where malware samples distributed through hacked web servers were bearing the mark in URL schemes of the Prometheus TDS, including some of today's most dangerous malware strains like Campo Loader, Iced ID, Qbot, Sock, Gaulish, and Beer Loader, all there. Good morning to Bob. Good morning to John. Thank you for joining us this morning, folks. Group IB's recent findings come to show that once again, the cybercrime ecosystem, it's not just made up of people who create malware. There's an entire, just like we have a supply chain, they have their own supply chain in the dark web as well. Something to keep an eye on. Here's some mitigation. Here's how I'm looking at this from a CISO perspective this morning. One, this further reinforces the idea of implementing some sort of web blocker within email. So if you're on Microsoft, you've got an E3, E5 license, you can deploy your safe links. That's really important. Other thing, awareness, training, looking at malicious websites, identifying malicious websites, putting in tools and controls that help identify malicious links and websites as they take place. Now, with remote work becoming a standard of the future, we have to look at this from a BYOD device perspective as well. Not every email can I scan. If Merle here, who's tuning in with us, has her Gmail account open, right? And she accesses and she gets the malicious email and is targeted to a malicious website. You may not be able to stop it, but you want to have an EDR solution that can recognize that malware and put a stop to it. That's why EDR is so critical, and having a few different versions of it from EDR, XDR, and so forth will help kind of deal with these types of threats. But understand the supply chain, and when you're talking to your threat hunters, when you're doing some threat intel, these supply chains, adding this element into it is critical. A lot of times we forget. We kind of go with the standard elements. We don't look outside the box. Really important. Add this to your to-do list, folks. Cisco issues a critical security patch to fix small business VPN router bugs. Cisco rolled out a patch to address critical vulnerability impacting their small business VPN routers that could be abused. The CVEs are tracked as 2021-1609er with a CVSS score of 9.8 and a CVE 2021-1610 CVSS score of 7.2. They reside in the web-based management interface of the small business RV340, RV340W, RV345, RV345P dual WAN gigabyte VPN routers running a firmware release prior to version 1.0.03.22. Both of the issues stem from a lack of proper validation of HTTP requests, thus permitting a bad actor to send a specially crafted HTTP request to a vulnerable device. Successful exploitation could allow to unauthenticated remote attacker to execute arbitrary code on the device, cause the device to reload, resulting in a DOS condition as well, denial of service. The Swing of Chaitin Security Research Lab has been credited with reporting the two shortcomings. Cisco has issued a fix for it, and they've patched all of these. If you're an MSP, if you have any of these, a lot of times we think of large enterprise businesses and we go, well, they don't have this, but some of them do deploy this in maybe smaller retail locations or small rural offices that they operate in somewhere where they don't want to complicate the IT because of the lack of flexibility to get there and so forth. Make sure you get these patched ASAP. We'll move to our next story this morning, folks. A Lockbit ransomware is recruiting insiders to breach corporate networks. You heard that right. The Lockbit 2.0 ransomware gang is actively looking for corporate insiders to help them breach and encrypt networks, and they're promising $1 million payout. Many ransomware gangs that operate with ransom as a service consist of a core group of developers, but these guys, they're going to a whole set of different affiliates to do this. So the gang is trying to remove the middleman and just get insiders within the corporate network. In June, Lockbit Ransomware Operation announced the launch of their new Lockbit 2.0 ransomware as a service. They've redesigned their Tor sites. They've got numerous advanced features, including automatically encrypting devices on a network via group policies. Again, Active Directory. A few weeks ago, I did a webinar with Carolyn and Joe over at Ativa Networks. We talked about it. Lateral movement using Active Directory. I can't tell you how important that is. Get your Active Directory in place, have someone managing it, constantly watching it, enable tools there, because that's where they're going to, and this is what Lockbit 2.0 does. It's going directly into your Active Directory, and it's gonna start from there, escalating privileges. It's critical to understand that. Lockbit is looking for RDP, VPN, corporate email credentials that they can use to gain access to the network. The ransomware gang also says they will send the insider a virus that should be executed on a computer, likely to give remote access to the network. Would you like to earn millions of dollars? Blah, 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 blah. Keep that in mind, folks. These guys are going after our internal employees. They're targeting them. They're offering them a lucrative payout. This is where relationships in an organization matter. It's one of those things, especially with remote work now, people could be easily tempted to do something like this, thinking they could never be traced. I would issue, and one of the things I'll probably do is issue a PDF talking about, you might be asked to do these things, it's not worth it, it's a crime, kind of putting out an alert, letting people know, we'll find you, and when we do, we'll prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law, and don't believe everything you see online, obviously. I've got people that will soften up the message just a little bit on that, but that's critical. Keep an eye out for it. Here's what they're trying to do. That's important. So Energy Group, ERG, reported minor disruptions after a ransomware attack. Italian energy company ERG reported only a few minor disruptions after its information and communication technology infrastructure was shut down due to a ransomware attack. The Italian Renewable Energy Group only referred to the incident as a hacker attack or a criminal attack, and it was coordinated by Lockbit 2.0. Here we go, folks. Just spoke about them. This could have been one of those cases where an insider given them access to this. The Lockbit ransomware gang started operating in September of 2019, announced a relaunch in June of this year. There's been no downtime after the attack. The recent rumors in the media that the criminal on the institutions and companies, ERG reported that it only experienced a few minor disruptions to its ICT infrastructure, which are currently being overcome, and also thanks to prompt deployment of its internal cybersecurity controls and procedures. ERG is the leading Italian wind power operator among the top 10 onshore operators on the European market. It has growing presence in France, Germany, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and the UK. The group operates in wind energy, hydroelectric, solar, and high-yield thermoelectric cognition energy sectors. On Monday, Enel Energy's largest utility company agreed to buy ERG's hydroelectric power asset portfolio for 1 billion euros, about $1.1 billion. This is, again, the target of critical infrastructure. Let's go back a month. Didn't NATO say that if anyone targets critical infrastructure, it'd be a declaration of war? Or was that just a blank statement set out of weakness because NATO has no chops to do absolutely anything, and all you've done is just create zero detractors? Serious issue here. One to be paid attention to, by the way, because this is renewable energy. And it's a really big push right now, kind of going green, and seeing this being targeted is very significant as well. Lets you know, turn on your light bulbs, pay attention to this, especially if you're in the energy sector or if you rely on alternative energy, something to consider. How do you tighten up your infrastructure? Our final story for today's show, folks. Russian federal agencies were attacked with Chinese WebDAV-O virus. How many of you guys think that China and Russia are friends and they hate America and the West and they want to take it down by all means necessary? Group IB has now delved into the new computer virus called WebDAV-O that was detected in intrusions within Russia. The popular Trojan, which is called Blue Traveler, it's also known to be connected with a Chinese threat group called Taskmasters and deployed in malicious activities in the aim of espionage and plundering confidential documents. There's a bit more to geopolitics here. So, one, you can see the functionality of the WebDAV on an x86 sample right here in front of you. It's specifically targeting Russian websites. It's specifically targeting Russian infrastructure, and it's looking for espionage. Now, why espionage? Putin and Xi, two, you could arguably say dictators, right, have a frenemy type of relationship. But you got to remember one thing. China borders Russia. They share a large land border, and Russia sees China's rise as being a direct threat to Russia and Russia's natural resources that China is eyeing. So you got to keep that in mind. That's not something you'll often hear about, but it's something very, very real that's going on. That's why when President Biden approved the gas pipeline for Russia into Germany, a lot of people went bad at it, but it's actually a good move. It might get Russia less reliant on China, more reliant on the West, which you need Russia on your side. We wouldn't have won World War II without Russia coming from the East. We wouldn't have won it, folks. Read the history books. You'll see it right then and there. If it wasn't for Russia coming in from the East and Hitler deciding that he was going to try to invade Russia simultaneously as everything he was doing, trying to be overly ambitious, World War II could have ended very, very differently. So keep that in mind. Now, why is this important? I want to take this back to business for just a moment because geopolitics has a direct impact on this attribution. When we see this kind of malware being used and viruses being used against Russia, understand two things. One, it's going to automatically be used elsewhere. Understand and look at how this works. Look at the stages of the attack. Look at all the different things it does right here in this image by Group IB, and start looking at it within your information, within your ecosystem, and share it with your partners. That's critical, folks. What the Chinese use elsewhere always ends up stateside, always ends up in Europe, always ends up in other countries in MENA, the Middle East and North Africa. Keep your eyes out for it. At one point or another, it's going to cross the Russian barrier and make its way to us. We have the intel now, thanks to Group IB. We can start to create defense measures in order to counteract it should the Chinese decide to use it elsewhere. Folks, let's get to some of your comments. Let's see here. Chris, thanks for being here, buddy. Espresso King, cheers indeed. Good morning, Brian. Thanks for being here. Good morning, Patrick. Thanks for being here as well. And Chris says, right, Stalin and NATO, more like nada. Nada. I like that, Alberto. That's a great point, folks. That's it for us here. We'll be back again Monday with more new Tech Corner coming tomorrow with Javad. Our CISO Talk episode that was supposed to go out today, but push it to next week, folks. I just couldn't get the right edit I wanted in there for this week's. So go check out last week's with David Nolan, though. If you missed David Nolan's the CISO over at Aaron's, one of the smartest people I know. He was one of the first guests on this podcast 3 years ago when I started it. Really, really good one. Go to the CISO Talk podcast or go to our CyberHub YouTube channel, and you can watch it there or listen to it on your favorite podcast listening platform. Tomorrow, right here, Tech Corner, and at 11 a.m., I'll be live right here also on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitch. You can tune in then. Until then, thank you so much, everyone, for watching today's show. I really, really appreciate it. We'll be back. Until then, have a great rest of your day, folks, and stay cyber safe. Cheers.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.